The perfect facade, the 32nd floor of the Blackwood Tower, offered a view that most people only saw in magazines. Manhattan sprawling endlessly in every direction, Central Park a green jewel amid the concrete and steel. Victoria Sterling had once found it breathtaking. Now, as she stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse apartment she'd called home for 8 years, it felt like looking out from a beautiful prison. "Mrs. Blackwood, your car will be here in 20 minutes. The voice belonged to Grace, Marcus's personal assistant, who had somehow become Victoria's keeper as well. Everything was scheduled, managed, controlled. Victoria touched the slight curve of her belly through her designer dress. 3 months along, and she still hadn't found the right moment to tell Marcus. Their conversations had become transactions. Charity galas to attend, dinner parties to host, appearances to maintain. When was the last time they'd talked about anything real? The elevator chimed, and Marcus emerged, already loosening his Italian silk tie. At 45, he was still the man she'd fallen in love with. Brilliant, driven, commanding any room he entered. Blackwood Enterprises had grown from his garage startup to a tech empire worth billions, specializing in AI systems that powered half the Fortune 500 companies. "How was the board meeting?" Victoria asked, turning from the window. "Productive." He poured himself 3 fingers of 25-year-old scotch, his ritual after long days. "The Aurora acquisition is moving forward. 15 billion, Victoria. It'll make us the dominant player in corporate AI. Us. As if she had any role beyond wearing the right dress to investor dinners. "That's wonderful," she replied, meaning it. She'd always supported his ambitions, even as they'd gradually consumed everything else. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and Victoria caught something. A flicker of what? Guilt? Excitement? His thumb moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. "I need to make a call," he said, already walking toward his study. "Important client." Victoria had heard that phrase countless times. Important clients called at midnight, on weekends, during their anniversary dinner. She'd been understanding, supportive, the perfect CEO's wife, but tonight something made her follow. The study door wasn't completely closed. Through the gap, she heard Marcus's voice, low and intimate in a way it hadn't been with her in months. "I know, baby. The Aurora deal closes Friday, then we can stop pretending." A pause. "No, she doesn't suspect anything." Victoria's too wrapped up in her charity work to notice. The words hit her like ice water. Victoria pressed closer to the door. "Natasha, listen to me. After Aurora, I'll have enough leverage to restructure everything. The prenup was ironclad when she was nobody, but now—" Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "She'll take the settlement and disappear quietly. She's not the type to make waves." Victoria's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. Natasha Cross, she knew that name. Marcus's COO, brilliant and ruthless, with predator's eyes and a smile that never reached them. "I love you too," Marcus continued. "This time next month we'll be announcing our engagement. The press will eat it up. Tech titan finds true love with his brilliant business partner." Victoria stepped back, her heart hammering. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of being the supportive wife, the perfect hostess, the woman who'd given up her Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism career to stand by his side. And he was planning to discard her like outdated software. She retreated to the living room, her mind reeling. When Marcus emerged 10 minutes later, she was sitting on the sofa, apparently absorbed in a book. "That was longer than expected," he said, settling into his chair. "The client had some concerns about the merger timing." Victoria looked up from her book. "The Art of War," she realized with bitter irony. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." Glanced at his watch. "Can it wait?" "I have an early meeting with Natasha about the final Aurora preparations." Of course he did. Victoria stood, smoothing her dress. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus froze, his scotch glass halfway to his lips. "What did you say?" "I'm pregnant, 12 weeks. Marcus set down his glass carefully, his face cycling through surprise, calculation, and finally settling on cold irritation. "The timing is unfortunate," he said finally. "Not congratulations, not joy. Unfortunate timing." Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart breaking, but something harder, her spine straightening, her jaw setting. "Unfortunate," she repeated quietly. "Victoria, be reasonable. The Aurora deal is the biggest acquisition in tech history. I can't have distractions right now." He stood, already dismissing the conversation. "We'll discuss this after Friday." After Friday. After he'd destroyed her life. Victoria watched him walk away, this man she'd loved, supported, built a life with. He saw her pregnancy, their child, as a distraction, a complication in his perfectly orchestrated exit strategy. But Marcus Blackwood had made one crucial error. He'd forgotten who Victoria Sterling had been before she became Mrs. Blackwood. He'd forgotten that she'd built a career exposing corruption, dismantling lies, bringing down powerful men who thought themselves untouchable. He'd forgotten that. Underneath the perfect facade he'd created, the real Victoria Sterling was still there, and she was about to remind him that the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose. The game was about to change, and this time, Victoria would be the one setting the rules. The gathering storm Victoria didn't sleep that night. She sat in the darkened penthouse, Manhattan's lights blinking like distant stars, while Marcus snored peacefully in their king-sized bed. By dawn, she'd made her decision. The woman who'd once exposed 3 senators and a Fortune 500 CEO for corruption wasn't going to let her own husband destroy her without a fight. Her first call went to someone she hadn't spoken to in 2 years, her brother James Sterling, a detective with the NYPD's Financial Crimes Unit. Their relationship had been strained since her marriage to Marcus, James never trusting the tech mogul's polished exterior. "Vic?" James's voice was cautious when he answered. "Everything okay?" "No," she said simply. "I need your help, and James, I think you were right about Marcus all along." They met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from Marcus's world of glass towers and power lunches. James listened as Victoria explained everything. The affair, the overheard conversation, the pregnancy, Marcus's casual dismissal of their marriage. "Son of a bitch," James muttered, stirring his coffee with unnecessary force. "What do you need?" "Names. The best corporate attorney in the city. Someone who specializes in taking down tech giants." James smiled grimly. "Helena Voss. She's a legend. Took down 3 major corporations last year alone. If anyone can crack that prenup, it's her." Helena Voss's office occupied an entire floor of a sleek building in the financial district. At 58, she was silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in corporate warfare. She listened to Victoria's story without interruption, occasionally making notes on expensive stationery. "Your husband has made several tactical errors," Helena said finally. "The affair with his COO creates a conflict of interest that could void certain aspects of your prenup. The pregnancy establishes you as a protected party under New York law. And this Aurora acquisition," she leaned forward, $15 billion is a lot of money to move around during divorce proceedings. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Marcus Blackwood is about to be financially exposed in ways he can't imagine. But I'll need more information, every detail about his business, his accounts, his vulnerabilities." Helena made a call, and within an hour, Diego Morales arrived. The private investigator was compact and intense, with the focused energy of a man who'd spent 20 years with the FBI's white-collar crime division. Mrs. Blackwood, Diego said, settling into his chair. Helena filled me in. I need access, passwords, schedules, habits. What does your husband think you don't know? Victoria thought carefully. He keeps a personal laptop in his study. Password is Aurora 2024. His phone passcode is our anniversary, 0814. He thinks I never pay attention to his business calls, but I hear everything. For the next 3 hours, Victoria became a forensic witness to her own marriage. She revealed Marcus's weekend client meetings that coincided with Natasha's travel schedule. The private jets booked through Blackwood's corporate account for market research in cities where Natasha had family. The shell company, Meridian Holdings, that Marcus had mentioned in hushed phone calls. Meridian Holdings, Diego repeated, making notes. I'll look into that. What about the Aurora deal itself? Any competitors? Titan Industries has been trying to acquire Aurora for months, Victoria said. Marcus was furious when they made their initial bid. He said Aurora's board was wavering. Helena and Diego exchanged glances. Insider trading, Helena murmured. If Marcus has been manipulating Aurora's stock price or using non-public information, the SEC would crucify him, Diego finished. Mrs. Blackwood, I need you to think. Has your husband said anything about Aurora's board members? Any specific names or meetings? Victoria closed her eyes, thinking back to the countless dinners and phone calls she'd witnessed. Rebecca Chen, Aurora's CEO. Marcus mentioned she was having doubts about the merger, and there was something about a board member named Williams who was asking too many questions about Blackwood's AI algorithms. Diego's eyes lit up. That's a smoking gun. If Marcus has been concealing information from Aurora's board or manipulating their decision-making process, we have him, Helena concluded. But timing is everything. The Aurora deal closes Friday. That gives us 4 days to build our case and strike. As the meeting concluded, Helena walked Victoria to the elevator. Mrs. Blackwood, what we're about to do will destroy your husband's reputation and possibly land him in federal prison. Are you prepared for that level of warfare? Victoria thought of Marcus's cold dismissal of her pregnancy, his casual planning of her destruction. He's not the man I married anymore, she said quietly. Maybe he never was. The elevator doors closed, and Victoria descended toward the street. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Not Mrs. Blackwood, the perfect wife and social accessory, but Victoria Sterling, the investigative journalist who'd never backed down from a fight. Marcus had taught her about corporate strategy, about leveraging assets and eliminating liabilities. He'd just never considered that she might have been paying attention. By Thursday morning, Diego had uncovered Marcus's most vulnerable secret. Blackwood Enterprises was leveraged to the breaking point, with over $8 billion in loans secured against the Aurora acquisition. If that deal fell through, the company would collapse like a house of cards, and Victoria Sterling held the match. Part 3. The Web Unravels. Wednesday morning brought unexpected developments. Arthur Finch, the forensic accountant Helena had recommended, arrived at their emergency meeting with a thick folder and the expression of a man who'd struck oil. Mrs. Blackwood, Arthur said, spreading documents across Helena's conference table. Your husband is more exposed than we initially thought. I've traced 17 different offshore accounts, all tied to shell companies he controls. The Cayman Islands, Switzerland, the Bahamas. He's been moving money for years. Victoria leaned forward, studying the financial web Arthur had untangled. That's over $40 million hidden away. 43 million, to be exact. All marital assets that should have been disclosed years ago. Arthur pointed to a series of transactions. But here's the interesting part. He's been liquidating these accounts over the past month, converting everything to cash and cryptocurrency. Helena's expression darkened. He's preparing to disappear his wealth. The divorce settlement he offered you was designed to keep you quiet while he moved everything beyond your reach. Diego entered the conference room, phone pressed to his ear. He was finishing a call with someone, speaking in rapid Spanish. When he hung up, his smile was predatory. "We have a problem with Marcus's love affair," he announced. "And by problem, I mean gift from the gods." He activated the conference room screen, displaying a series of photographs and documents. Natasha Cross isn't just Marcus's COO and mistress. She's been feeding information to Titan Industries for 6 months. Victoria felt her world shift. She's a double agent, corporate spy, more accurately. Look at these phone records. Daily calls to Titan's acquisition team. Email metadata showing she's been sharing Blackwood's proprietary algorithms and Aurora negotiation strategies. Helena stood up, pacing with barely contained energy. "Marcus doesn't know. He thinks he's playing Natasha, but she's been playing him all along." "It gets better," Diego continued. "Natasha has been manipulating the Aurora timeline. She convinced Marcus to accelerate the deal closure, telling him Titan was preparing a counteroffer. But there is no counteroffer. Titan wants Blackwood to overextend themselves." Arthur spread out another set of documents. "If the Aurora deal goes through as scheduled, Blackwood Enterprises will be debt-loaded and vulnerable. Titan can then acquire both companies for a fraction of their combined value." Victoria stared at the evidence, her mind racing. Marcus, for all his brilliance, had been completely outmaneuvered by his own mistress. The irony was almost poetic. "There's more," Diego said. "I have a contact at the Financial Tribune, Samantha Rodriguez, investigative reporter. She's been tracking Titan's aggressive acquisition strategy for months. When I showed her what we've uncovered," he held up his phone, showing a draft article headline, "Tech Titan's $15 billion betrayal, how a love affair nearly toppled Silicon Valley." "She wants an exclusive," Diego continued. "Victoria, your background as a journalist gives this story credibility. You're not just a scorned wife. You're a Pulitzer winner exposing corporate corruption." Helena was already calculating their strategy. "We coordinate everything for Friday morning. The emergency injunction freezes Marcus's assets just as he's trying to complete the Aurora transfer. Simultaneously, the Tribune publishes the exposé about Natasha's espionage. The SEC investigation follows within hours." "What about Natasha?" Victoria asked. "Does she know we're onto her?" Diego grinned. "She has no idea. As far as she knows, she's still manipulating Marcus and feeding information to Titan. But I've been feeding her false information through a back channel, making her think Marcus suspects nothing." Arthur pulled out one final document. "The beautiful part is Marcus's own paranoia. He's programmed automatic financial triggers throughout his system. If Blackwood's stock drops more than 20% in a single day, it automatically liquidates his personal holdings and transfers them to those offshore accounts." Empire in freefall Friday morning, 8:47 a.m. Geneva time. Marcus Blackwood stood at the head of Aurora Industries' conference table, radiating the confidence of a man about to close the deal of a lifetime. The Swiss banking consortium had approved the final funding. Aurora's board had voted unanimously in favor of the acquisition. All that remained were signatures and wire transfers. "Gentlemen," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority that had built an empire, "today we're not just merging two companies, we're creating the future of artificial intelligence." Rebecca Chen, Aurora's CEO, smiled as she prepared to sign the transfer documents. Blackwood Enterprises has certainly proven itself worthy of this partnership. Natasha Cross sat beside Marcus, the perfect picture of professional competence. Her Cartier necklace caught the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She squeezed Marcus's hand under the table, a gesture of shared triumph that Marcus interpreted as love. Unaware it was calculation. At precisely 9 p.m., Marcus's phone began to vibrate. He ignored it initially, focused on the ceremonial signing. But the vibrations didn't stop. His CFO, David Chen, was calling repeatedly with desperate persistence. "Excuse me," Marcus said, stepping away from the table. "One moment." In the hallway he answered the call. David's voice was strained, barely controlled panic. "Marcus, we have a situation. Our primary accounts at Goldman Sachs have been frozen. Court order, federal injunction. I'm getting the same reports from JP Morgan, Wells Fargo. Everything's locked down." The words didn't immediately compute. "What are you talking about? Frozen how?" "Emergency family court ruling. Marital asset protection pending divorce proceedings. Marcus, they've shut down everything. We can't move the Aurora funds. We can't even pay our employees today." The conference room suddenly felt airless. Through the glass, Marcus could see the Aurora board members chatting casually, unaware that the deal was disintegrating in real time. "Who filed this injunction?" Marcus demanded, though a cold dread was already providing the answer. "Victoria, your wife has somehow convinced a judge that you're attempting to hide marital assets through the Aurora acquisition." Marcus's reflection in the hallway mirror showed a man watching his world collapse. "Get Thorne on the phone, now! Fix this!" "I can't reach Thorne. His office says he's in court, but they won't say which case." Natasha appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from concern to something harder as she read Marcus's face. "Problem?" she asked. Before Marcus could answer, her phone chimed with a news alert. She glanced at it, and Marcus watched her face transform. The mask of loving support fell away, replaced by cold satisfaction. "What is it?" he demanded. She held up her phone, showing the Financial Tribune headline, "Exclusive, Tech Giant's Secret Collapse. How Corporate Espionage and Marital Betrayal Brought Down Blackwood Enterprises." Marcus grabbed the phone, scrolling through. The article, his own quotes, his private conversations, his financial vulnerabilities, all laid bare for the world to see. But worse than the exposure was the revelation buried in the third paragraph. According to sources close to the investigation, Blackwood COO Natasha Cross has been providing proprietary information to rival company Titan Industries for over 6 months, orchestrating what may be the most sophisticated corporate takedown in tech industry history. Marcus looked up at Natasha, seeing her clearly for the first time. "You've been working for Titan all along." "I've been working for myself," she corrected, her voice devoid of the warmth she'd feigned for months. "Titan offered me the CEO position when they acquire what's left of Blackwood, which after today should be quite affordable." The conference room doors opened, and Rebecca Chen emerged with the Aurora board members. The celebratory atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by confusion and concern. "Marcus," Rebecca said carefully, "we're receiving some disturbing reports from our financial team. There seems to be an issue with Blackwood's ability to complete the wire transfer." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Marcus could see Lake Geneva sparkling in the morning sun. The same view that had represented triumph just minutes ago now felt like a mockery. His phone rang again. This time, it was a number he recognized, Samantha Rodriguez from the Financial Tribune. "Mr. Blackwood," the reporter's voice was crisp and professional, "I'm calling for comment on our story about the SEC investigation into Blackwood Enterprises. Can you confirm that federal agents are currently searching your New York offices?" "Federal agents." Marcus closed his eyes, finally understanding the full scope of Victoria's assault. This wasn't just a divorce maneuver. It was a systematic destruction of everything he'd built. "No comment," he managed. "What about allegations of securities fraud related to your Aurora negotiations, or the insider trading investigation based on information provided by your wife?" Marcus hung up and turned to face the Aurora executives, all of whom were now staring at him with barely concealed alarm. "I'm afraid," Rebecca said slowly, Aurora Industries will need to postpone this acquisition pending resolution of these complications. The deal was dead. $15 billion of financing, 2 years of negotiations, the crown jewel of his corporate empire, gone in the span of 20 minutes. Natasha was already gathering her things, her role in this performance complete. "I'll be flying back to New York today," she announced to the room, "to assist with the federal investigation." Marcus watched her walk away. This woman he'd believed loved him, this partner in his imagined future. She'd played him more completely than he'd ever manipulated any business rival. His phone buzzed with a text message. From Victoria. "You said I wasn't the type to make waves. You were wrong about a lot of things. Our daughter deserves better than the man you've become. Our daughter." Through all the chaos, those words hit him like a physical blow. In his arrogance, his casual dismissal of Victoria's pregnancy, he'd forgotten the most basic truth. He wasn't just losing a wife, he was losing his child. Marcus Blackwood stood alone in a Swiss conference room, watching his empire crumble through news alerts on his phone. The man who'd built a multi-billion-dollar company from nothing, who'd thought himself invincible, had been outmaneuvered by the woman he'd underestimated most. Victoria Sterling had reminded him of a lesson he'd forgotten. The most dangerous opponent is the one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The war was over, and he'd lost before he even knew it had begun. Part 5. Rise from the Ashes. 6 months later, Victoria Sterling stood at the podium of the Metropolitan Conference Center, facing an audience of journalists, tech executives, and federal regulators. The woman, who had once been dismissed as a mere trophy wife, was now the keynote speaker at the Tech Ethics Summit, her story having become a cautionary tale that reverberated throughout Silicon Valley. In her arms, she held 3-month-old Sophia. Sterling, she'd legally reclaimed her maiden name, a healthy, perfect baby girl who slept peacefully despite the cameras and crowd noise. "When I married Marcus Blackwood 8 years ago," Victoria began, her voice carrying the authority she'd once wielded as an investigative journalist, "I believed I was partnering with a visionary. What I discovered was that unchecked power, even in the hands of brilliant people, inevitably corrupts." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Victoria's exposé of Blackwood Enterprises had led to the largest corporate fraud investigation in tech history. The ripple effects were still being felt across the industry. "The Sterling Foundation," she continued, adjusting Sophia in her arms, "exists to ensure that what happened to me and to countless other corporate families never happens again. We provide legal resources for corporate whistleblowers, support for families affected by executive fraud, and most importantly, education about the warning signs of corporate corruption." In the audience, Helena Voss smiled with satisfaction. The legal fees from Victoria's case had been substantial, but watching her client transform from victim to advocate had been worth far more than money. The divorce settlement, after frozen, assets were recovered and federal penalties paid, had netted Victoria over $200 million, money she was now using to hold corporate America accountable. Diego Morales, now the Foundation's Director of Investigations, nodded approvingly. From the front row, his team had already opened files on 12 cases similar to Victoria's, corporate wives whose husbands had tried to discard them while hiding marital assets. The tech industry has spent decades promoting the myth of the brilliant, infallible founder, Victoria said, but brilliance without ethics is just sophisticated criminality. My husband taught me that lesson, though not in the way he intended. Marcus Blackwood was conspicuously absent from the tech world these days. Federal prosecutors had been thorough. Securities fraud, tax evasion, RICO violations based on the money laundering through offshore accounts. He'd avoided prison through a plea bargain, but his corporate career was over. The last Victoria had. Unheard, he was living quietly in a modest apartment in Portland, working as a consultant for small tech startups that couldn't afford to be particular about their advisors' pasts.